Hello, good afternoon. For those who I haven't met, my name is Carrie Mott. I'm the Head of Marketing for PagerDuty here in Asia Pacific, and we are so happy to have you all with us here today. We've got a fantastic agenda planned for you, and we're very, very grateful that you have given us one of your most important assets, which is, of course, your time. In actual fact, as I reflected on some of the brands that we have here today and some of the logos that are represented by these organisations, I started to think about the services that they support. And those services certainly underpin my life every day, and certainly those of billions of individuals around Australia, New Zealand, and of course Asia Pacific. So you are all responsible for those services, so thank you ahead of time. One thing that becomes incredibly clear as you think through the responsibility of everybody here in the room is that not all superheroes wear capes. And by that, those services are not easy to keep available, reliable and consistent across our ever-increasing digital landscape. There is certainly one superhero though that represents, I think, everybody here in the room, which is that of the Time Lord, because what you do is to truly bend time. So we appreciate again you taking the time to join us today. Let's jump into the agenda. We do have quite a strong agenda for you this afternoon, so we're going to talk a little bit about the future of the Digital Operations Management landscape and some insights and developments around the PagerDuty roadmap. We've got some phenomenal customer success stories, talking through how incident response and best practice digital operations management is being deployed across some leading organisations throughout Australia, New Zealand and Asia Pacific. We're going to stop and have afternoon tea as a little bit of a refresher, because there's some great content in that first session, and then we'll move on to this afternoon sessions where we'll look at having some discussions across multiple different industries and how they're deploying best practice incident response. We'll give you some hands-on tips as to how you can deploy best practice incident response in your organisation, and we'll round up with a phenomenal panel focused on bringing together some of the different solution providers that underpin, I know, a lot of your organisation's infrastructure. Quick thank you to today's speakers for making it possible. It's great to have so many of our community together so that we can share insights and certainly learn from each other. Quick thank you to the sponsors who have made today possible. This is the second year that we've run PagerDuty Connect in region. It gets bigger each year. It's the end of a 7-city roadshow for us around the world, and certainly the numbers of attendees and the interest that we've seen from our communities has been immense. So it's all about you today. Give us your feedback, and certainly we'll continue to run these series moving forward. Just joking. It'd be nice if you turned your phone to silent, but you certainly don't need to turn it off. I think this is the one room that I would never ask to do that. For those who are looking for detail on Wi-Fi, it's just up there on the slide, so I'll let you put that in. There is also a hashtag for the event, which is PagerDuty Connect, hashtag PagerDuty Connect, if you wanted to post or share anything with some of your teams who may not have been able to join us today. Keeping the lights on back at the office. There is actually too a PagerDuty zone just out in the networking area. I really encourage you to spend some time with either Trish or David Bridge, have a look at different use cases within the PagerDuty platform, see it in action. I have a couple of demos here. We wanted to keep the focus of the content very much around the amazing customer success stories that we have. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today. Probably one of the most customer-centric individuals I've ever come across. He's certainly been leading product and engineering teams for some phenomenal brands for over 20 years. He also happens to be my boss. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to our Senior Vice President of Product and Marketing, Jonathan Rende.
Thank you, Carrie. Can you hear me okay in the back?
Yes.
So it's a pleasure to be here. Year 2 of Connect, and I guess what I understand is this is the 1-year birthday for PagerDuty. So to my colleagues in Sydney, happy birthday. So what I wanted to talk about today was, not digital transformation. Haven't we all maybe heard enough about digital transformation? I know I have. That said, what I really wanted to talk about today was some of the second-order impacts of digital transformation, the impacts on people, what it takes out of your daily life as a knowledge worker, in our personal lives. If you think just a few years ago, 10 years ago, things were so different. Today, this has impacted the availability of services, the ubiquity of services has changed the way that we shop. It's changed the way that we consume media. It's changed the way that we get from one place to another. It was funny, just the other day I was thinking about this. I have two daughters. One is 18, going off to college, which I'm happy. One is finally out of the house successfully. The other is 16. And in this, when they were 10, 8 years old, I was trying to impress upon them, number one, never talk to strangers over the internet. Just don't do it. And number two, never get in a strange car. And so fast forward to the present, now on a daily basis, they're contacting strangers over the internet and they're getting in strange cars that show up to take them from point A to point B all the time. So, it's just fundamentally changed the way that we operate today. And why is that? It's because, in my opinion, time, we mentioned it before, we appreciate your time here. Time is the most important commodity there is. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. It's been said many times before. And for responders, for individuals that we care about, that we're building our solutions and our platform for today, it's all about making the most of your time, making your lives better, allowing you to context switch less often, allowing on-call to be bearable. And when you think about how much is time worth, today the expectations are way different than they were a few years ago. I have much less patience when it comes to a particular service being available. If something isn't available, maybe with the exception of airline Wi-Fi, that never seems to be available for me, but with the exception of that, I expect those services to always be there. And when they're not, I'll switch to something else. So it's brand equity. It's top-line cost. It's the cost of the individuals who are supporting those services. And we're not talking about hours, not even minutes. We're talking about seconds. Seconds matter in this scenario. And one of our largest customers, a big retailer, one of the largest in the world, Fortune 5 company, they've quantified that their downtime is $500,000 a minute. $500,000 a minute. That always has to kind of sink into me to keep their online retail going. And if you think about what it takes and the savings when somebody goes from 4 nines to 5 nines, 5 nines being 5.2 minutes of unplanned downtime a year, 4 nines being somewhere in the order of 50 plus minutes a year. You take the difference of that, it's about 47 minutes, if I've done my math right, $500,000. It's about $25 million in savings that they have per year if they can invest and make that. That's material. It's material for a company of that size and that scale. But it's not just retail. It's also financial services. Another one of our customers quantifies hourly downtime as $6.5 million. So the stakes are high. And the impact on people supporting those is even tougher. So what's the model in which most organizations work today? Most of you are familiar with a model called command and control. It's been around forever. It's been around since ancient Roman times. And it's an effective model for many things. I'm not saying it's bad, but in this real-time world where seconds matter, it's not the optimum way to communicate in an organization. Said another way, if you have a website that goes down, do you want command and control managing this? Do you want the developers who developed it having to communicate up a chain of command, then down a chain of command to get answers, and then do what they want to do? No. You want them to be empowered on the front lines to be able to do what they need to do and ensure those services stay up. So, command and control has its place. There have been some changes over the years. If you're familiar with the automotive industry, manufacturing, there have been other models. Back in the 1980s, Toyota really put the automobile world kind of on its ear, where they put assembly line workers and they gave all the people on the line a big red button. And whenever they saw a defect on the manufacturing line, they hit that button. And they were encouraged to hit that button to stop that line because they didn't want a defect getting all the way through the end of the process. So I'm not trying to say that building software is like building a car, but there are certain analogies and we can learn a lot from that. That's very similar to a lot of that DevOps and best practices in that area. So what is required? So we kind of view the world in two ways. There is a kind of a queued world, a planned work world, and then there is a real-time world. And the way we kind of differentiate these two is that real-time world requires DevOps best practices. It requires, empowering people on the front lines to have the right information at the right time to take the right action necessary. There are other things. They need to be able to collaborate. They can't work in silos, because many times today, we're not dealing with just applications, we're dealing with services. We're dealing with microservices. We're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are the experts on each of those services, and that needs to be coordinated. That can't be done manually. You can't have, when one of those services goes down, you can't have a situation where somebody's going to a call list manually and saying, oh, is Joe available? Is Barbara available? Trying to get them on the line. Hours can pass. Trying to get the right people engaged. That has to be automatic. Also needs to be proactive. These teams need to be the first to hear about that issue before customers hear about it, not reactive. They need to be able to learn from this. So the notion of what we call a blameless postmortem is critical. There's no blame. It's what happened, what did we learn from it, how can we apply this going forward. This new way of working is critical, and it's kind of at the core. It's the essence of what we do at PagerDuty and try to do for all of you and help you in this journey. And that was really the vision of 3 engineers a little over 10 years ago that graduated from the University of Toronto, and they made their way to Seattle. They got jobs, their first jobs, as engineers on the retail side of Amazon, working where Amazon was just selling books at that time. And their first day on the job, they were all handed a pager, and they were told, you build it, you ship it, you own it. So in many ways, Amazon is a pioneer when you think about the world of DevOps and the empowering of people on the front lines for this. And that, again, was the genesis of PagerDuty, being on call. If I talk to Alex and Andrew and Bhaskar, especially Alex, we work together on a daily basis today, he's like, it sucked. It sucked. The stress of just being on call, when you had to work a job to do and that switching and always being available, it created a level of tension that, he just thought there has to be a better way. So what have we created? At PagerDuty, for those of you who may not be familiar or may be familiar maybe with kind of the base product of PagerDuty, really the vision, that long-term view was all about going from digital signals, from signal, all the way to action. Taking action, doing real work. And that was very, very important. And there's a whole life cycle and process there. What we do effectively is take in all signals, and that's increasing and broadening all the time. Not just monitoring products, not just information from service desk and help desk, but from social media, from tweets, correlating all of this information together, grouping it intelligently, turning it into incidents, showing you the incidents that matter most, and then think of PagerDuty as a multi-channel, reliable way to communicate with different teams to ensure that they have the information they need when they need it. And that's really at the core, and then a learning kind of continual process as a part of this as well. So that's the big vision. That's what we've been focused on. That's what we've been doing. And what's been amazing during this process is the number of customers we've had the opportunity to work with and what we've learned from them and share through our best practices with them as well. It's a tremendous amount of data that we sit on top of that we're really excited today to share with you some of the new products that are making use of some of that data for the first time. So this is the PagerDuty platform. We call it affectionately our hamburger. This is, if you think about it, it starts with all of those integrations, how we gather all of those digital signals. 280 plus, it's growing all the time. The big change on the integrations is that we're treating many of these, the most important ones, as products today. They were Historically, a lot have been created by our partners. They've been created by customers, and that's great. But we have to make sure that those not only will work for individual teams, but scale. And we can stay on top of all of the innovations that are happening with our partners. So that's kind of at the foundation. Next, we spent the last 6 to 12 months focused on making the platform secure, dealing with GDPR, making it scale, making it be able to ingest the volume of data that it has to in today's world. And sitting on top of that is our on-call management. This is what every PagerDuty many of you are using today, if you think about it. It's that automated communication to that first individual. And how do we make that as efficient and effective as possible? But sitting on top of that, there are several other net new products that are important. On the right-hand side, we have modern incident response. Think of this as, instead of just one individual, what happens when these are microservices, detailed, that the ownership of these services spans different geos, different locations, hundreds, if not thousands of individuals. Collaborating and coordinating, all of that is super, super important. And then learning from it with postmortems. That's all a part of modern incident response that we'll demonstrate for you a little bit later. On top of that, in June, we announced a brand new product, something we call Event Intelligence. If you think a moment ago, what I mentioned is we sit on this incredible pool of data from our 10,000 customers. And what is that data? It's data that talks about responders, what they're doing, when they're responding, what they're responding to. We're making use of that in Event Intelligence to reduce the noise. Reduce the noise. There's, one of the things is people are adding more monitoring products all the time. In doing that, there's more noise coming to all of those responder teams. The last thing you want is teams running off and fixing redundant problems. So Event Intelligence helps address that problem. And sitting on top of that, we have our analytics-related products. On the right, we have business visibility. And then on the left, we have analytics. Now, we have analytics in our core product today that allows you to measure MTTR, MTTA, etc. But what we've done on the right with business visibility is create a real-time view. Think of this as during the heat of the battle, during wartime, to create a linkage between the technical services and the business services. So you no longer will have to worry about drawing manually the linkages between, wow, these 3 business services are down. What does that mean to the business? What does that mean to the shopping cart service? And then who is impacted by it? How much does it cost? So showing that in real time is a huge unloading of the burden. And then we have analytics, which is all about kind of operationally ensuring that the responder teams, the management, the business side are all in alignment over time about what are the most important improvements to make in this process. And sitting on top of that, we have our use cases. So how many of you work as a developer today? How many of you work in an operations mode today? So those are the 2 main use cases that our customers are using PagerDuty for today. But increasingly, we're seeing customers use PagerDuty outside of development, outside of IT ops. It's been amazing to witness. Over the last 1 to 2 years, we've seen 300 organizations start to use PagerDuty as a part of their security practices, integrating it with their SIMs, with their security monitoring products. Again, to mobilize and orchestrate activity, real work around security threats. Same thing with customer support. IBM today is one of our largest customers. 6,000 to 7,000 of the users at IBM are using PagerDuty as a part of their support organization. How does that work? Case gets opened up on the customer support desk, and the right engineers in Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 are notified and start the process of working on those cases that are opened. Again, having customers sit without a response, having customers sit with a long time of resolution just isn't an option anymore. And then we have the world of business ops and industrial ops, the physical world, IoT. Increasingly, customers are starting to use our product in that as well. It's interesting to see all the many uses. So one of our customers, Lonely Planet, started using just the base PagerDuty product and moved to modern incident response. And if you're familiar with Lonely Planet, they're the largest online travel guide in the world. They have 17 million monthly users. They have 6 million followers in social. They have 10 million downloads of their mobile app. They're huge. Their business model is predicated on selling advertising, selling services. So in doing that, when any of those services are down, it's costing them an incredible amount of money. In the first couple of months of using PagerDuty, they saw a 200% decrease in just time to acknowledge. And that's huge for them. So what we wanted to do now is do a quick double click, kind of go into a little bit of the product platform, show you and demonstrate to you modern incident response, and share with you a little bit about event intelligence. And to do that, I wanted to introduce Abhijit, who runs our technical sales organization here in Sydney. Abhijit.
Thank you, Jonathan. Applause. Didn't mean to force them there. All right, so let's talk about modern incident response, right? And before I actually do that, why don't I show you the screen that we'll be running this demo off of. Now, what is modern incident response? It's automated, it's precise, and it helps you learn from the particular issue or the incident that you're dealing with, right? And there's another component of it, ownership. One of the things Jonathan mentioned was command and control is the traditional way of doing it, and you may have noticed there was a dinosaur in that command and control as well. It works in certain situations, but not in terms of dealing with it. Right. So, can you hear me now? Yeah. So, the idea is that even before, in modern incident response, even before an actual incident arises, there's a lot many more things you can do to avoid that incident. And that's what we're going to look at today in this demo. So what I'm sharing with you right now is the PagerDuty incidents screen. But you may notice that, passcodes. You may notice that although PagerDuty is calling out, everybody knows the passcode now. That was the whole intention. All right. So everybody can notice that you're working with 3 incidents here, right? There are 3 incidents on 2 of the services in the shopping cart, which is one of the main services. One is on the database and the other one is the app server. Now, if you were to squint a little harder, you would see that this incident is made up of 30 different alerts. This incident is made up of 10 different alerts, right? So even before somebody got notified of an issue, there was a variety of different events and alerts that were correlated and grouped together. So if you look at the events and alerts funnel, and if you look at a person who's on call and he's stressed because, hey, he may get a call at 3 a.m. in the morning, or she may get a call while she's in the movie, the idea that PagerDuty is going to let them know only about the things that most pertinent is powerful. Right? So event intelligence really means limiting the noise to the end responder. And it starts off by enabling that responder to classify which alert should be routed to them. Applying certain logic around, in their telemetry, what is actionable and what needs to be suppressed so they can capture it for informational purposes and trend analysis. And so through event rules, you're able to set up that granular classification. And if I were to show you a quick example of an event rule, you will see that here I can pick up any attributes from an incoming payload, whether it's an API or an email, it doesn't matter, through a quick logic of, simple logic of selecting the key value pairs, I can start to say, hey, if this condition is matched, then perform these actions. right? And the actions are varied. I could dynamically add runbook and checklists to certain alerts so that when the responder gets a notification, they click on it and they see what are the actions they can follow, right? I get so excited talking about this, I can go on for hours. But for now, we'll just quickly move in the interest of time. So this is the event rules, right? And through event rules, we're able to also set up what needs to be grouped together. There are two components to grouping, right? One is time-based grouping. The idea is that you're able to correlate a variety of different alerts that are happening within a certain period of time and then group them. That's 85% of the grouping scenarios, especially when you deal with alert floods and you know a service is down. There'll be a huge amount of alerts coming to you from a variety of different monitoring and logging sources. You're able to group them. The second piece is PagerDuty automatically, intelligently groups those alerts, some of those alerts for you based on your operational practices within our platform. So now, as an on-call responder, I'm happy that a lot of the noise has been filtered out, right? But when I do get notified of an issue by PagerDuty, of course, I'm getting a phone call, I'll get a text, I'll get an email, but I also get push notification on the mobile app. And as you can see on the mobile app here, since many of you told me mentally you didn't remember the passcode, I just put it out. Right. So through the mobile app here, as a responder, now I can start to engage with the issue itself, right from the phone. I don't need to worry about opening up my laptop and looking at the issue on the source. Right from my phone itself, I can first say, yes, I'm going to start working on this issue, so I'll acknowledge it. Many of you are familiar with this. This is to avoid any escalation that may happen. But also, right from my phone, I can start to run a variety of different actions. One of them could be restarting a server. The other one could be running diagnostics and fetching that data to inform my response process. Those are my machine calls that are available to me as a click of a button. If I can restart a database, don't do that. But if I restart a database using an API call, yeah, I can click a button right here. Now imagine for a responder who's in at 3 a.m., kids are sleeping, they get this, and they've already shut their phone down. Many of you do, I'm sure. And they see it, they're like, okay, let me try these few things so that I can go back to sleep quickly. It's very important. Right? And especially when they're only being notified of something that's pertinent, that's important. The other piece is now, let's say I tried these automated calls, it didn't work. I need to bring in somebody else from another team to help me out with this. Again, by a click of a button, I can either select the individual, or I can select the team that I need. I can select the database team, the incident commander team, or even the marketing team if needed. Right? This is where I'm starting to do modern incident response. I'm not relying on manual callouts. All of this information is available at my fingertips. I'm just clicking buttons, and I'm getting the help that I need to resolve this issue. And from a business standpoint, this is about recovery of a service as quickly as possible, right? So right people are engaged at the right time. But at many times, we know for a particular kind of incident, there may be some documented set of steps we need to execute, right? Let's say there's a billing issue, our customers are unable to pay us the bills. We want that money, right? But the idea is that, hey, we usually tackle billing issues in a certain way. Well, if you have a documented process of tackling that issue, let PagerDuty know what that process is. Who needs to be brought into the issue? Does the billing team need to be notified? Or the accounting team needs to be notified about the fact that, hey, customers are unable to pay their bills. Maybe you need to reach out to them proactively. These are people communication, these are business communication. And they're outside of the typical response process, but they're part of your response process, right? And that's modern incident response. But again, tell us what that process is, and you can automate that by the button. So as you can see, there's a lot of emphasis on just clicking buttons, right? And doing a variety of different tasks automatically. And whatever I do as a responder on the phone, teams of people can do together as well on PagerDuty web UI as well. Same thing about adding responders to a particular incident, opening up conference bridges, right? Inserting those links of those conference bridges to be passed on to the responders who need to join it. This process, outside of PagerDuty and having worked with a variety of different customers, some of who are here today, this process used to be at least 15 to 45 minutes. We reduced that to 2 minutes. Again, I don't need to know who is the individual on a particular team. And as Jonathan mentioned earlier on, time is the biggest currency in incident response. But the other component of modern incident response and event intelligence is the fact that are we dealing with the same issue over and over and over again? Yes, we are. In this case, we have dealt with this issue 171 times in 6 minutes. Oh, sorry, 6 months, not 6 minutes. I got really carried away. And our mean incident duration is 1 hour. Why? Oh no, 1 day. That's great. Why? Why do we keep dealing with the same issue? Is there something that we can adjust within our telemetry? Is there something, can we create a runbook or a checklist to avoid these kinds of incidents to come up if we were able to just solve the alerts initially? Are we dealing with a noisy service? Are we dealing with these incidents on services that are tier 2 that nobody really pays attention to? All those kinds of meaningful insights can be gleaned just by this heat map. When does it happen? Is the user load a lot more on the application during these times? That's why we're getting a shopping cart issue or a billing issue. But the idea is this is a unique insight that PagerDuty is giving to you automatically and building it out for you without you having to do anything. This is historical context. It's available to the team of responders, and it's available to the individual responder as well. And as you route these alerts from different sources to PagerDuty, as you group them, as responders take actions on them, as you get historical context into what's occurring on a particular incident, as you add additional teams to an incident, as you execute your stakeholder, your business communication automatically, as you run your machine responses by a click of a button, all of that is being tracked for you by PagerDuty in a detailed timeline. So when you resolve this incident, you're ready to build your postmortem. Now, one of the customers that I was talking to today, he said, why do we call postmortems postmortems? Nobody's dying, right? It's a fair point, but post-incident reviews or root cause analysis, however you want to call it, the idea is that when somebody tries to build these out, when we do weekly incident reviews, it's like getting death with 1,000 cuts, right? You have to look at logs, you have to look at conversations. All of that is already being pulled into this postmortem form for you automatically by PagerDuty, because all those actions that were taken on an incident are available to you as a detailed timeline, which I can simply just select and populate in my own timeline. We can also bring in conversations from your chat tools, like Slack and HipChat, right? And then, of course, you build out your postmortem through a customizable form. This is modern incident response. This is about enabling and empowering the people on the front lines to do what's right. This is about letting teams own their services and being able to resolve and collaborate with each other in a meaningful way. And secondly, thirdly, it's about automating the information to inform how you're going to respond to these incidents moving forward. Right. You'll see me again in just a little bit. For now, thank you.
Okay, so Abhijit walked you through modern incident response, walked you through a little bit about event intelligence. To share with you another one of our customers, how many of you are familiar with Evernote? Quite a few. I use it all the time. I had an opportunity just about a month and a half ago to speak to their CEO, who's just down the road from us in San Francisco, and they were engaged. Evernote was running in a private cloud. One of the things that they wanted to do was to move and migrate their application from the private cloud into the public cloud. And what he was telling me is that everybody had told him this is going to be about a 6 to 12 month project. It's probably going to go over. You'll have to deal with outages and incidents that will happen during the process. It could be very painful. So they had already been using PagerDuty, and he was familiar with it. Their whole teams, their responder teams, and their developers started to use the product. They actually accomplished the migration to the public cloud in 6 months with no major outages. No one even knew. None of their users today even knew that they made that migration, which was a huge, it was an honor to be a partner with them, but he was ecstatic about the process. And that really speaks to how important this is as a part of the process in any kind of major transformation like that. Abhijit spoke a little bit about event intelligence, that net new product. The only thing I wanted to add to what was already mentioned is I talked before about data. We sit on a tremendous amount of data, and we're using that data along with machine learning, in this case, to get smarter, to group incidents together, to group alerts together automatically. In a lot of organizations, that's a manual process. Looking at our own data, there's some incredible stats. Compared to just a couple of years ago, with the customers using our product today, that's about 350,000 users across 10,200 companies, if my numbers are most up to date. Looking at those numbers, what we see is today versus 2 years ago, responders are getting hit with 3 times the amount of alerts that they were 2 years ago. It's incredible, and it's only going up. Anytime somebody puts another Nagios in there, or another new relic, or another app dynamics, and starts getting more signals, or connects to their service desk, more signals, that has to be grouped together. And this heat map and that automatic grouping becomes critical. And there's no configuration, there's no setup. We literally turn this on with a radio button, and the continual learning of our algorithms is done by the responder data itself. Anyway, early returns have been fantastic. Some of our customers, Capital One and others, have seen over $1 million in savings by not having to deploy teams in different areas. Only have them work on the incidents that are most important in the organization. One of our customers, Macy's, they're going to be speaking at our annual event this year. They had 2 members of their team that were tasked with manually grouping alerts and incidents. So using event intelligence, they freed up those 2 people to do way more important tasks, way more interesting tasks, knowledge tasks, versus this tedious manual activity. Andrew Percher is going to be out in San Francisco in September telling more about his stories. It's a phenomenal story, and it's not unlike many of the other early customers who are using event intelligence. I wanted to spend another quick second and talk about the next layer of products, our analytics and business visibility. And the way I think about this is it's really 2 sides of the same coin. If you think of during an incident, that real-time, wartime experience, that's what business visibility is all about. You don't want an incident team getting interrupted by some executive swooping in and saying, how many customers are getting hit by this? That's a bad thing. You want them to focus on the problem at hand. And our analytics product is, think about that as not real time, but over time. So people can go back, look at the issues and how they've progressed, how they've been addressed, and figure out the right types of investments to make that better going forward. So business visibility, I'll touch on this, and then I'll show you a live demo real quickly. Again, there's 2 parts of this. Some of you may be using the product Operations Command Console. That's the web view that I'm showing here. Operations Command Console, think about it as that eye in the sky. Whether you're in a NOC or whether you're a developer on the front lines, you need to know what services are being hit. You need to know who's working on those services along with yourself. And then we have a visual correlation that shows you, hey, there was just a release. And lo and behold, there's a bunch of changes and a bunch of alerts that are coming in because of a recent push into production. That's the operations command console part of this. And the new piece that we're adding in September, we're making some big announcements about in San Francisco at our event, is the mobile app down below. And I can just demonstrate it for you here versus just talk about it. Let's see. Clearly at break, I will be changing my screen. Okay, so what I'm showing you, what you can see are, let's see here, make sure I'm in the right place. What I'm showing you are the business services. I mentioned before, Carrie mentioned that I've worked at a number of different companies over the years. In my last company, I worked for a SaaS company. I ran the engineering team. And I had all the responder teams on one side, and I had all the executives and our customers on the other side of the house. If you kind of envision a bow tie, I was the knot in the tie. Whenever a system went down, whenever we had an outage, I had our COO, I had our CFO, I had customers calling, and they were saying, Rende, what is going on? What is going on? Who's working on what? What's the impact? How many customers have been impacted by this outage? So I was always in a mode where I was manually running around gathering this information and putting together the right content with my teams and making it available to the rest of the organization and our customers. Business visibility is designed in a mobile experience to do exactly that. It's to create that link, to automate that link between the business services, the shopping cart, and the technical services, things that no human should understand the name of. You know, a list of 20 different services or 50 or 1,000 microservices. Because most of the time we see that knot in the bow tie, that role that I played in that last organization, is that's one of the individuals who really understands like some of the linkages between the technical services and the business side of the house. So what I'm showing you here, this is our own internal system. And these are the business services that are linked to many of the technical services below. And one of the services called Events API, what you can see here is this is a real-time view during production of the availability of that business service. So we'll be able to give that information and provide it real-time to that individual that's kind of caught between these two worlds. And you can see how that correlates to the events process, to the number of support tickets, as an example. So if you see here, there have been some dips in availability of this particular business service. And a little after just before 1:30, you can see that, availability dipped into, the 2 nines here. Now, what does that correlate to? Well, in this case, there are some customer tickets that were opened up right afterwards, which I'm not scrolling to accurately here. But you can see a couple of these tickets on the right. So we can start to correlate in a single view the number of support tickets coming into a potential outage as an example. Now, that's one part of this from the business side. But then I want to know for this Events API, what are the different business technical services that are associated with it? And that's all listed here. And so in addition to these technical services, we'll have the ability to integrate what we call impact metrics. A numerical number, a dollar amount, for the time of an individual spends the cost to fix an incident, and the number of individuals working on that. So by integrating that, all of a sudden we'll know the cost in real time of these outages, these downtimes, these degraded services as well. Pretty amazing. Pretty cool. I'm excited to get this. It'll make my prior life a lot easier. Can we switch back to the slides for a moment? So that's business visibility and OCC, what we'll be launching together. And if you have OCC today, you'll get this mobile experience as part of that. But we have our analytics products over time as well. And there's a family of products. On the lower right here, I have what we call our Operations Health Management Service. This is a managed service where we create what we call a health score. Again, we're using all of our data, and we're looking at the 24 hours of time of responders and breaking that into work time, evening time, sleep time. And we're noting things such as how often responders are interrupted. We know from our data that when a responder gets interrupted 3 nights in a row while they're sleeping, it's not good. It impacts their daily work lives. It impacts their productivity. Many times it impacts their view towards their employer, and they leave. In my last job, I used to find out about these kind of things when somebody would walk in and resign. And this gives a predictive, a proactive view into the health of your responders who are working on those teams. And this is a managed service that we have available today. Additionally, again, we have our core analytics that are part of the product, but what we're launching in September is our advanced analytics. And think of this as a way to provide reports to 3 different constituents in your organization. On the lower right, if you think of the review teams on a weekly basis, the responders are getting together and they're trying to understand, okay, who was on call? What were we doing? Do we need to change schedules? Providing all that information in an automated way is important, but then that has to be aligned with maybe the manager of all those teams who's concerned with, gee, what are the services that are most problematic? How do we need to shift resources to account for this? Or where do we need to invest in engineering more to account for maybe outages or downtime? And then on a quarterly basis, you might have a situation where the business side of the house is saying, we had 3 outages last month that were 7 months. How much did that cost us? What are we doing about that? So the ability to align all 3 of these folks in an automated way, to have these reports emailed out on a periodic basis, that's what we're trying to accomplish to help the teams mature. And we're putting together a set of best practices that we'll make and will open source for everyone as well. So very excited about what we're doing with analytics and how we'll make that available in September. Now on top of the platform itself, we have all our use cases. And I spoke a little bit earlier about the developer community, the ops community, talked about security and customer support. What's interesting to me is what's starting to happen in the physical world. People using PagerDuty outside of just the typical corporate infrastructure. One of these customers is a nonprofit called SiteLife. SiteLife is a nonprofit. They have about 100 technicians. And if you're squeamish, you may not like this story as much, but what they do is if you're an organ donor and you've signed up for that, if you expire, they deploy these technicians to harvest corneas. And they do that because they have a certain period of time. Talk about seconds and time and days mattering. They have a certain period of time in which they need to harvest the corneas so that they can capture those, put those in a solution, and actually, with surgery, give those to people and provide sight. They deliver sight to over 50 different people a month around the world, mostly in parts of Asia and parts of Africa. They're doing a tremendous service that people are now have the gift of sight because of it. They use PagerDuty to deploy these technicians around the world, and then they have 2 weeks once they harvest the corneas to get them in their recipient. So just another example in the physical world of how somebody's using PagerDuty in a time-sensitive way. So we wanted to walk you through another example. Our marketing organization today, in addition to sales, in addition to development, in addition to every part of our company uses PagerDuty. So Abhijit was going to walk through how our marketing organization uses PagerDuty.
And thank you, Jonathan. I'm back, and I won't ask you for an applause again, but I will ask. There's a lot that we unveiled today. Who's excited about what's present now in PagerDuty? Like, can I get a... No, hands, not hands, let's hear a cheer. So, we talked about modern incident IT, or modern incident response in terms of IT and IT ops and DevOps, but as Jonathan mentioned, a lot of our customers are using us in different functions as well, and one of them is marketing. So instead of going through slides, I'll quickly show you a quick demo of how marketing uses a PagerDuty. All right, so same screen that we have here, but as you can see, the detail of the incident have changed. If you think about the marketing function, how many of you are here from marketing? Just one. So I can say whatever I want. No, so the idea is that they do ad management. They have to manage, where they're deploying resources in terms of the brand and where the coverage should be. How much should they spend as they're running campaigns based on different product releases or just changing the market. What is working, what's not working. It's a very dynamic environment. And since the dollars are operating in a dynamic environment, they have to be nimble in terms of allocating them into assets that return the fastest ROI, right? And so it becomes important that even marketing functions actually start behaving like DevOps and IT ops, where the most pertinent information needs to get routed to the right person at the right time, and even that actions are automated in such a way that when they take that action, it leads to an outcome quickly, right? Without, again, going through the command and control setup. And so here we have an incident called form fill for a particular training that, let's say, a company is launching, and we have reached the threshold, right? There's more interest in that training, but more people are unable to join it. What do we do? All right, so as soon as somebody who's on call from the marketing organization, imagine somebody being on call from the marketing organization is actually getting this incident notification, they can quickly say, by running a play, which our responder teams were doing, by saying, hey, can we send a quick communication to our growth marketing managers to increase the allocation for this particular campaign and redirect dollars, because this is a working campaign, right? And this is one of the use cases. One of our customers, that's a big car share or ride sharing company, I won't name who, even their legal team is on call in PagerDuty because they want to get ahead of any public relations disasters before they happen, because these are high customer-facing issues, right? So we go from marketing to legal, and then the sky is the limit. But this is just one of the ways that other functions can also leverage PagerDuty. So thank you.
So again, we're moving right along here. Again, what's critical to PagerDuty is the gathering of all those digital signals, that ecosystem. That's where everything starts. And as you can see, with PagerDuty 280 plus that are growing all the time, start in the monitoring space and span security and support, and then chat and workflow as well. And so as a part of, we have not only several customers here today, but we also have several partners. And some of these integrations are used by many of our customers. On average, each customer we usually see uses about 5 to 10 different integrations. I'm honored and privileged today to share the stage with one of our partners, one of the biggest, if not the most commonly used, which is AWS Amazon. We have Adrian DeLuca with us today, who runs solution and architectures for APAC for AWS. Adrian, welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan. Oh, here it is, there it is. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I do want to wish PagerDuty a happy first birthday. I think that deserves a round of applause. 2 years ago, I joined AWS, and our biggest conference that we have in Las Vegas, re:Invent. I remember going past your booth, Jonathan, and just trying to learn something about you. And it's always intriguing to me at AWS as we see these phenomenal companies landing in our part of the world. And I also want to acknowledge a couple of key customers that we have together. Many of you are in the room. Xero, Atlassian, REA and car sales, thank you for trusting AWS and PagerDuty even when they were not here on premises or here in the country. If you've heard any AWS presentations or listened to some of our reInvent speeches before, you'll keep hearing some common terms: customer obsession and taking away undifferentiated heavy lifting. And again, the last 2 years for me, it's been just insightful just seeing how we continue to do that. AWS has done a lot of fantastic things for many of you who are running operations. I remember back in the days when I was running on-premise systems and doing incident management and alert or responding to alerts. We had to install things like agents and SNMP traps and who's still doing that, by the way? Is that still a thing? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for you. But that is a tough job. And what the cloud has done fundamentally by really aggregating all of those metrics that happen right through a stack, right through an application, we've taken that undifferentiated heavy lifting away of just the basics of getting those alerts. But in saying that, what we've also done is generated a lot more new alerts. And today, if you look at a modern cloud platform, or if you've lifted and shifted your enterprise application like SAP or your Microsoft applications, we still have lots of alerts coming through into services, and for those of you on the AWS platform, from a service we call CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a managed, integrated, or centralized messaging service where we can take an event, we can give it a target, know where to send it to, and process some rules. But another thing that we talk about at AWS is, in the spirit of customer obsession, is we don't always have the right answers. Although we've solved a lot of these problems on the ground or at the platform level, dealing with those alerts may not necessarily be our bag. But certainly PagerDuty, and hopefully what you've seen today, does do that. And not only do they do that with other AWS partners. We're also very privileged to have companies like ServiceNow and Atlassian and Slack also being AWS customers and people who integrate with the AWS platform. Today, we have over 2,600 customers that are using PagerDuty on AWS. So you should all feel very, very confident that this is a validated solution. We have some of the biggest customers in the world running large environments at scale on a cloud platform with modern incident management. But there's other reasons why you as customers should also feel confident. One of those is the fact that we do a lot of joint engineering. And that joint engineering resulted in PagerDuty actually becoming one of our advanced technology partners. What that actually means is that being an advanced technology partner is not that just someone who actually goes and sells with us. We co-engineer together. And in fact, to meet the bar of an advanced technology partner, PagerDuty has to demonstrate use cases or actual customers that are actually happy with the products. So we have a high bar, and again, congratulations for meeting that. I also want to acknowledge the fact that they're one of our DevOps competency partners. And by being a DevOps competency partner, once again, they're meeting the high bar, and we've got repeated use cases. So when you come to AWS or you come to PagerDuty, ask for those use cases. See how other companies are putting this into action. Now, another thing is the ecosystem. AWS, again, very privileged to be able to say that we have over 30,000 partners in our network today. Many of those are consulting partners as well as technology partners. But you as customers want to go and look at the next level of undifferentiated heavy lifting. And that's what we're doing with partners like PagerDuty, is not just looking at how we engineer best for cost, availability, security, and reliability, but how they actually integrate together. So again, I do if you look at, again, all of those logos on there, they're also AWS partners. So please do go and visit them in the stores. The final thing I want to be able to talk about is actually something very new, something that was only announced a month ago at our New York Summit. And I'm very pleased and again very privileged to announce that you can now get PagerDuty on the AWS Marketplace. For those of you who don't know what the AWS Marketplace is, it is a curated catalog where you can choose from over 4,300 products from over 1,400 ISVs ready to run. The idea is that you can discover what you need for your use case, that you can actually buy it on the platform and deploy it into your AWS account. So this is just another way in which we're taking away this undifferentiated heavy lifting, and that is available today. So please do, again, I do encourage you, come and talk to AWS PagerDuty about some specific use cases. We're doing some wonderful things, not just outside of this geography, but the investment that you're definitely seeing here is paying off with customers here. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate it. So again, we've done a whirlwind tour through the platform just to keep you and get you up to speed on some of the new products here. But you're not in this journey alone. We do have a global presence, not only here locally in Australia, but also in Europe, in the UK, as well as across North America. And here's just a sampling of some of the customers, many of whom are going to speak here today after this session. So very honored to have you all here to hear that and for those customers to speak. I mentioned before that PagerDuty is about people, and we want to grow in the right way. It's core to our values, our culture, and so we are giving back. As we grow, 1% of our profits actually goes to a set of different nonprofits and organizations, Girls in Tech, Copyright Academy, etc. And we participate in the community. I know the local Sydney office just did a project around Habitat for Humanity like we did in the other offices around the world. And I do want to personally invite all of you. I know it's a long way to come, but I promise it'll be worth your time, it'll be worth your effort to come to our summit event in San Francisco. It's in September. And I know it's going to be great because I'm writing the checks for it and they're huge. So, and we've got an incredible lineup. Just to give you a sampling of that, there will be great keynotes, amazing sessions by many of the customers that I referenced today, as well as best practices and learning. Our engineering teams will be there to answer questions. Our product teams will talk about the roadmap. We have John Alspa as one of the keynotes, he's a guru when it comes to the world of DevOps. Most people know him in that world for a lot of his best practices. He has a very famous blog. We've got Ray Kurzweil. Like, if you ever want to feel bad about what you've done in your career, look at his resume. I mean, the guy's been honored by multiple presidents. Forbes magazine called him the Thomas Edison of our time. He's invented more things than days I've been at work. It's crazy. Patrick Lencioni, who's written the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, so that how teams can collaborate more effectively and trust one another. Some really great content here. I personally, again, invite you to the event. And because I'm going to make it easier for you, when you come back from break, that's right, break, right? Yes. We're going to identify 15 folks who came here today and give you free tickets. They're valued at $1,000. It's a valuable conference. We're going to waive that fee and give free tickets to those organizations. And you do need to be present to win. So please come back from the break. And with that, thank you very much. And are we going to break or? Yes, Alistair is going to speak first, sorry. Alistair is one of our customers. We're very honored and pleased to have him here from Ladbrokes. So, Alistair, welcome.
Good afternoon. PagerDuty and Ladbrokes. So, a little about me first. I'm Alistair, Head of Technology Operations for Ladbrokes Digital Australia. I'm responsible for managing and maintaining basically all of our environments, make sure they're highly available and scalable environments. Beneath my team we have like systems engineers, technical support, database admins, desktop support, and security. I've been at Ladbrokes for over 3 years now. Before that, Tats Group and Tote Tasmania. There was a little state-owned wagering company. So, strong background in wagering environment. I enjoy running, playing guitar, and a bit of home brewing. So, I want beer tips, talk to me afterwards. And also just cleared my half marathon, so I'm looking around the stage, that's the reason why. So Ladbrokes Australia, we actually started as a startup. We started as a small startup called Bookmaker, and then a year later after that we were acquired by Ladbrokes UK, which is now Ladbrokes Coral. And in that time we've gone through some massive growth. We sort of pretty well doubling each year. It's been quite crazy to be part of. We have approximately 350 staff. Our workload is also very seasonal. So starting the year, summer racing carnival is very busy. Then there's a bit of a dip. This year we had the World Cup, which was quite a good spike for us. And then it'll drop off again. Then you get sports finals, and then into October, which is spring racing. And that's where it gets scary, because basically every Saturday just grows and grows and grows into that one day of the year, World Cup. And that's really just strap yourself in, it's a crazy day. But we're also a highly competitive market. There is a lot of other companies like us out there, so if we're not providing good service or our site's down with issues, people will go somewhere else. And so there's a crowded market, so we need to be on top of that. Example is, during a busy period, a minute downtime can be worth more than 100,000 to us or more. It's not just the training we lose, it's getting customers back, because if a customer goes somewhere else, we need to entice them back and things like that. We can't just say they're gone, they'll start trading somewhere else. So, coming from a startup environment, we can make mistakes early on, and sometimes things that you make a mistake on day one, it comes back to bite you later on. Example, 64K would be enough for anybody. In some cases, it might be something like a database setting or a table in a database go, oh, that should be right, and you might have 10 queries early on, fine. A couple of years later, that's thousands of queries a second, and that can be really bad for you. So with our rapid growth, our code base has been quite large, and we're breaking it down to microservices. So anything new that goes out is a microservice now. And the development teams are also shifting it to you build it, you support it model. Previously we've had sort of the traditional, it goes to QA, it's gone, shipped, I forget about it. No longer that's the case. It's no longer, it goes out, I forget about it. No, if it breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's those devs that are getting called. So we basically go in an agile framework with a DevOps culture, because as we've grown so big, if we have a small issue, a couple of years ago, it might have been a little bit of a blip. If we have an issue in our site now, with so many people hitting the site, it can sort of cause quite major problems for us. But honestly, we've been using PagerDuty for quite a number of years now, and honestly, we do love the product. It is a great product for us. And we actually do, when we look at new products in our environment, examples, something like we took on Synology at the start of the year, in our matrix for selecting a product, we include an option of, does it integrate with PagerDuty? We have to have that straight up, because it's so ingrained into our environment. And all our tech support has it, all our devs, our systems guys. And some of our, and also it's making our team smarter by having the developers set the alerts for what the environments are, for the microservices and the group of systems. Because basically, if everything is critical, nothing is. So there's hundreds of alerts going off, and they're all just doing nothing, then it's an overall alert. So we're trying to get smarter with our alerting. Some of our favourite features are mobile app. I love the mobile app, it's great. Basically, part of our onboarding for anyone who goes on call is basically first thing is download the mobile app. We'll take you through a page, we have a Confluence page, show you how to get set up. And now we've also included stakeholders now. Stakeholders being people like lead managers, Xcode, so they can know what's going on. So executives know what's going on. They sort of see the alerts, see it's been actioned, see who's dealing with it. It gives them that peace of mind. API integrations, goes without saying, but calendar export, I'm not sure many people use this, but we actually use it quite a bit. Is you can basically go into any of your schedules, export the calendar, and then we actually put those into Confluence. So for big race days and things like that, we basically have a template page, and then we basically have who's on, who's covering what area, and basically it becomes a run sheet for that day. So we sort of template that out, and it's really good. And last thing, from a management point of view, is escalation reports. These are where I mean, we have people on call, but they can't always get to the first call all the time. You know, you might be driving through a tunnel, you might be on the train, you might not hear it. But sometimes you want to know, does this happen often to the same people? Do you have a few people in your tech stack who sort of don't get the call and it goes to the secondary person? So we run a primary, the secondary and the tertiary. And tertiary is generally me. You know, if it gets to me, then it's a problem. But if you have an issue with constantly a call missing the primary going to secondary, sometimes you might just need to talk to that person and say, hey, we notice you're missing a few calls, have a bit of a chat to them, make sure everything's okay. Are you comfortable on call? And things like that. Because sometimes you can actually get into the team and you might not know about it because the secondary guy's getting woken up in the night going, why am I getting woken up? Why is the primary not getting it? So some of the metrics that matter for us said, losing a minute of downtime can be 100k. Last year's Melbourne Cup, our network traffic by 11 o'clock in the morning had passed over the previous years. So for them, we were in a totally new environment. We were just, everything's good from now on. Last year's Cup, over that day we had more than 1 million bets, and we also had more than 300,000 new users on that single day sign up to us just on that day. A few things we put out as little microservices recently. Quick codes. Anyone do any in-play betting? So if a game's on and you want to call up and say, okay, I'd like to put a bet on during the game, in Australia that has to be actually answered by a physical person on the phone saying what game do you want to put the bet on, who do you want to put the bet on, how much, etc. That can be quite a long process. So we've introduced what's quick codes is people click on the site, click down to the individual line market, gives it a 3-digit code, and they'll just dial up and say, and then we'll see the name pop up, oh, Mr. Smith, and they'll just go, yeah, ABC, $50, straight on. And that's taking those calls down to more than 200 minutes, down to less than 30 seconds. So it's sort of really helped our phone operators get through their calls quite quicker. Other one is credit card pre-auth. That was quite manual to basically verify cards. Now it's totally all online. It's really reduced the workload on our staff. So how do we use PagerDuty? It's basically central to how do we handle all incident responses. And we partner with basically all these other software. So we Synologic we started using at the start of the year. That's all our logging, but it's also not just when we're getting logs, it's when we don't get logs. So examples, we stopped getting data for sports odds. Sports odds stop coming in. That fires an alert to the sports feed team to investigate. New Relic, we use that for our IPM, basically also site availability. PRTG is more system metrics, and SQL Monitor is whatever SQL database admins rely on. We're also shifting towards the DevOps culture. So today we've got 70 plus people using it. So it's not just the 30 team members under me. We've got 40 devs, plus there's BI guys. So if you want a BI team, if their cubes fail overnight, they'll get called. But it's also we're trying to basically get faster response time. So it's not just traditionally used to be a level go to tech support, he'd have to investigate. Now it goes off and goes to the subject matter expert who actually knows the code directly. They jump on straight away and reduces basically incident customer. Most cases we might have a problem and the customer won't even see it because we've got to it so fast. And it's making our devs smarter in what they code. Because if you're responsible for the alerts or responsible for getting woken up, you've got to do things a bit faster. Sorry, and the last two things we're doing, we're looking to roll out response plays. Basically, one single button alerts everyone. Postmortems, I hope we never need them, but we're going to have them there ready. Expanding out stakeholders right across the executive team so they all know what's going on. And event rules and incident priorities to basically minimise what the alerts are and basically the real alerts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alistair. Please join me in welcoming Massimo and George, who head up IT operations at Cabcharge.
Can you hear me? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks PagerDuty, thanks Eric, Carrie to inviting Cabcharge to present our transformation journey. Read it to the next one. Great to see so many people here today. I actually asked Eric if I could bring my guitar and my band on stage, and I don't get that many people anymore. But he told me to stick to the program and to talk more about orchestrating incidents at Cabcharge instead of kind of directing my band. Here I am. I've got 10 minutes only. It's not too much, but it's still more than our MTTA, so it's not too bad. I'm Massimo Bonato, Head of Technical Operations, and probably the best way to describe what's my responsibility is by telling you what is my PagerDuty role. I'm a PagerDuty escalations, kind of third in level. I'm a PagerDuty stakeholder, so I receive also notifications about incidents and updates. I'm at times also an incident commander, and yeah, kind of orchestrating incidents, yes. I've got George Salim here with me, sorry, George. He's a product owner of one of our agile team. He'll be talking more about things. Cabcharge was established 42 years ago as a way to provide alternative solutions to cash in taxis. The Cabcharge paper docket has been very successful for many, many years until we introduced electronic payment, also with the launch with the e-ticket and the fast cards and credit card payments in taxi. Cabcharge is also 1-3 cabs and silver service with almost 50% of the taxi here in Australia kind of affiliated to those two taxi network. In the last 3 years, as part of our strategic goal to be Australia's leading personal transport provider, and as part of our digital transformations, we were able to launch many new products and services. We launched Spotto brand as a new payment service. We launched the Digital Pass, which George is going to talk about that later on. Alipay too. We've got our 1-3 cabs app, which has a 4.7 rate on the App Store. We also have the Cabcharge Plus portal, which is used by our 20,000 accounts all over Australia to manage their travels. Just to give you maybe more numbers, we got 28,000 devices, moving devices all around Australia. All these devices, they send IoT messages to our Azure cloud, 35 million IoT messages. And by the way, Microsoft told us recently that Cabcharge is the largest IoT hub in the world. We do many transactions, so 3 million per month, and that's why we have to be PCI compliant. It hasn't been an easy journey, of course. In the last 4 years, Cabcharge has been going through many challenges, including government regulation changes, and of course fierce competitions, especially with the advent of Uber. It was kind of a wake-up call for the organizations, for Cabcharge, that something had to change and we had to adjust. So 2 years ago, Dion Ludic joined Cabcharge as the CTO of Cabcharge, and he had two main strategic goals. One was to build and mature a sustainable and agile customer-centric execution capability. The other one, the second one, was to create a proactive and stable IT operational environment. I could now spend probably hours talking through all the challenges and our transformation, but effectively all the the common words that you hear today during these speeches and you read up here, they effectively apply for Cabcharge. What I can tell you that kind of 2 years later, Cabcharge is operating in a completely different way, and our ability to launch new products and services has helped the organizations to turn around. The technology department now has matured into a much more structured operating model. We have 9 agile teams, what we call squads. They all have a customer focus, They have their own purpose, and of course they're responsible for their own product and services. And they also have a fancy DevOpsy name, you might be able to see there. People management and skill set is through chapters, expressed horizontally here. We have, of course, an enterprise architecture forum, and we have an agile coach who's helping us in developing our agile capability. Technical operations is probably still following more ITIL standards, I should say, though as you can see we don't really have a 24 level 1 support. At Cabcharge we also introduced OKR as a way to drive goals with key objectives. And we have clear operational goals with clear service availability, response to incidents with the 10 minutes NTTA, with quality of changes into production, coverage of our monitoring and alerting, of course fast resolutions and fast communications to stakeholders in case of incidents. How do we reach our OKR? How do we measure our OKR? Is through PagerDuty. There you go. Through PagerDuty. We've been using PagerDuty already for more than 2 years, integrated already with many different application and services, including, of course, App Insight in Azure for all our IoT monitoring and for all our digital products monitoring. Of course, we have the traditional SolarWinds, PagerDuty, Pingdom for all our API and websites monitoring. We have Freshdesk for urgent ticket alert escalation, and other applications that are talking to PagerDuty, even CrowdStrike for security. We also make use of the live call routing in PagerDuty for our contact center to escalate also urgent requests to on-call staff. We have also our third party and even banks. They're calling one of the PagerDuty live call routing number to escalate issues to staff. And then of course PagerDuty does all the automations behind the scene for fast response, escalations if required, and collaborations to we're using Slack, Teams, Status.io for stakeholders notifications. We have almost 40 PagerDuty users now. Half of them are operations and security, and half of them are more DevOps, and they're effectively growing. How about George talking more about DevOps?
Thanks, Massimo. So as the product owner for corporate accounts, we use PagerDuty to solve problems before our customers know. So we are a DevOps team who takes pride in owning and supporting what we build. This autonomy lets us control our own technical stack, and it also helps promote a strong culture of accountability. The outcome is actually more robust services with fewer incidents, and in the case of an incident, reduced time to resolution. So before PagerDuty, we had some type of alerting, but it was mostly through email. Despite that email going off to the whole team, if we didn't attend to that email immediately, there would be a delay in us responding to that event. So what do you do for a payments business that operates 24/7? Well, with PagerDuty, alerting is linked to a rotating roster, and we have a clear communications policy. And because developers don't enjoy being woken up, there's added incentive to identify the important alerts, to set thresholds stakeholders are comfortable with, to filter out any noise to prevent true alerts from ever being overlooked, and to correct root causes to avoid future disruptions. We've in fact gone from customers telling us about incidents to identifying and correcting them before our customers noticed there was a problem. We also use PagerDuty in our development of cutting-edge technology. In our mission to be the first payment choice for passengers, we recently partnered with Apple to launch a digital payment product. Passengers can now receive a digital pass straight to their mobile phone or to their Apple Watch to pay for a taxi ride. This service is completely automated and it must be available 24/7. And without PagerDuty to give us early warnings for potential problems, we wouldn't be able to maintain this level of service. So in closing, PagerDuty supports us both in our everyday work and in our continued innovation. It has helped us drastically reduce our incident resolution time. And as we continue to search for ways to drive better travel experiences, ensuring our services are reliable and timely is critical to our success.
Thanks, George. We're already using PagerDuty with, I believe, most of the functionalities. I think we are working already with Eric to extend it, and also by using event intelligence for more automations. We'll continue definitely more integration, and we're already working into putting a light of PagerDuty on top of our cars. Thank you very much. So you might want to look under your seat, and if you are a lucky winner, you might win 2 digital pass. Thank you very much.
There could be an empty seat.
And if you're one of them,
Check
please go to George, because you have to issue digital passes.
Do we have anybody who managed to find a digital pass? Woo! There's one back, and there's the second one.
We've got 3.
There's a third one out there. Check the seat next to you.
Check the videos.
Please join me again as well in thanking George and Massimo.
Thank you.
Up next, we have one more speaker before we break for afternoon tea and have a coffee, and that speaker is Wesley Najur from ING. Please join me in welcoming Wes, Head of Infrastructure and IT Service Management.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to share the story of ING with you, and now PagerDuty being part of that story. So just quickly, a bit of background about ING, who I am. So I head up infrastructure for the bank. I've been there for a long time, 15 years. We actually started as a startup in Australia. Back in '99, we were the first online bank in the country, so really the genesis of what a fintech was. It was a fantastic opportunity to be part of it. Really simple products that we brought to the market. It was all about pulling all the complexity out and building something that customers really love. At that time, we were really about just secondary bank, having your savings account with us, give you a really good online experience, high interest rate, and we were one of those banks that didn't charge you any fees for any of those kinds of things, right? And that's still really our DNA: rip all the complexity out of banking and offer a real cool experience. So what's happened over time is actually we've now gone from being your secondary bank to wanting to be your primary bank, right? Have the share of your wallet. Whether that's with your home loan or your everyday transaction account or your savings account. And when we released our Orange Everyday account, which if you have an Orange Everyday account, we were the first one to really pioneer no fees for everyday banking and no fees for ATMs, right? And then you see what happens is, the market responds and they see that this is really the right thing to do. Charging people for really just putting your money into an account is ridiculous, right? So that's what we're about. We're really about that bank who, I would say, is probably the more on the noble side of empowering you to be a step ahead with your money. And what's happened actually in more recent times is we've just had this exponential growth. And so assumptions we made earlier on about our architecture and our platforms have really started to come back and show its true light of those decisions. And we really needed a platform that can help us bring insights into that. And that's sort of where PagerDuty was born in our organization. So we've done a bunch of things over time. So we've done a bunch of things in the infrastructure. So we really, when we looked at Agile, we weren't thinking of it as a methodology or anything like that. It was just a bunch of engineers working together to try to get stuff out. And before you know it, there's a thing that came out called Agile, DevOps, etc. But really, we felt like we already embraced that. It really was a culture. So we were really making everything really, what was slow, quick, right? So infrastructure was really slow. We did a couple of cool solutions. We may have heard of it called Bank in a Box. We did this thing called Zero Touch, where we just simplified our architecture, and that really gave birth to our devs and our engineers working together in squads to actually build new products. So really, our purpose is to empower you. Empower you with your money and how you spend it, get you ready. So really build readiness, so you can make the right decisions with your financial well-being at the time, wherever that is in your lifetime. Whether if you're fresh out of school, getting your first job, or to when you're retiring. So when we speak to our customers, this is what they tell us. They want a fair product, good service, always on. When you use any device, any channel, and that really is where our strategy was born. Really, these 4 pillars of our IT technology strategy. It was around simplicity, ubiquity, actionable insights, and extreme availability. So it really comes down to just good customer service, right? We really want to build great customer experiences for every time we interact with the bank. So when we first found PagerDuty, we were really trying to advance our own problems, right? One of them is we had a typical bank has this thing called overnight batch that you have to run. It's very manual. It's a bunch of people looking at screens and making sure they call out at the right time if it's slow. And it was really killer, right? It doesn't scale. It's human-centric, and we really just wanted to kill this problem once and for all. I mean, we could quite have easily kept on going down this path, but we're engineers and we want to solve challenging problems. The other thing is we wanted to really accelerate our own DevOps maturity. So our engineers were already taking access to production, they were releasing their own solutions, and they were also finding it very difficult building their own tool set for every one of those services. So could we have a smarter approach of doing that? So it's very basic at the start, right? Really use very simple tools. I mean, most of these tools you guys know. ServiceNow for our ITSM capability. Splunk was really where we put a lot of our energy into. This logs was really important to us, and our environments are very dynamic, so they're always coming and going. So you can't actually look at the server anymore because the logs are not there. So we actually have to aggregate that, put a lot of energy there. But we're really relying on very, let's call it unreliable services to get communicated on, SMS, email, etc. So we had to solve this problem. We had a lot of engineers missing calls, falling asleep, whatever it was. So we had to deal with it. So we actually started building a bit of an ecosystem here, started plugging these tools together. PagerDuty being our default alerting mechanism. So we want to build context into our events. We want to be able to bring the best of each tool to the actual alert, and then allow the engineer at the front line to make the best call. Figure out, get that little mean time to response down. So PagerDuty really is at that surface. We still have SMS and alerts, but now at least the default position is we've got really rich escalation, really rich call up, and that's it's really changing. And also the work is changing, right? People are not working in Outlook, right? They're in their Slack channel. So Mattermost is where our engineers work. Is we run a distributed workforce. So really the context of the engineering is in the chat. So you have to put the alert to where they are. So why tools, right? It's really about amplifying your abilities. That's why we buy tools, right? It makes what you're good at even better. And for the things you can't do, it plugs something in for you. So we were looking at what makes it a really good tool for us, especially in this space, was the integration. It's all about integration. Some things you can plug in, other things you have to build. And if you have to build it, make sure the API is really rich and it's documented well, etc. So that's why we really like PagerDuty for that. Self-service as well, because you can give it to your devs, your engineers, they can set their own roster, their own way of work. Escalations, we really needed that, right? We needed to just kill that whole manual escalation process. We wanted a default escalation policy that we know would always be reliable, regardless of whatever was said. And channel support, it's really about using the right tool. Obviously, I'm always using the mobile app, but a lot of people like to use SMS, push notifications, whatever it may be, and that's really important to us. So did we get there? I mean, I think we've solved the batch problem. We automated pretty much all of it, and largely we still have some people watching screens, but largely it's they don't have to really worry about the alerting side. That's really taken care of in PagerDuty, and it's really about that just-in-time alert. Right? We don't want them getting a whole bunch of noise. We want them to be able to get the right alert and be able to respond in just enough time to solve it. And it actually is a very scalable solution. All our technology uses it, we plug it in across everything. So DevOps, as I said, it's a culture. And I think the culture continuously evolves as you scale. But we're still on the way. We've got a bunch of squads that do this cross-country, cross-continental, and within Australia, and different teams are at different paces. So, this is a tool that just helps them along the way as well. So really for us, this is what it means really on the ground. When we think simplicity, it means elegant solutions. Right? We don't want to have to do things that shouldn't have to be done. It's also about, ubiquity. We want to get the right channel for the way people want to work. Actionable insights, so SRE, so it's a practice that we've established actually. One of our guys is Aaron Campbell, he's in the crowd. He's running an SRE practice, so you can have a chat to him about what it means to actually take advantage of when you have an ecosystem of tools and a bunch of integration that you have to keep, healthy and keep going progressively. And extreme availability. We have 4 nines, and we're pretty proud that we can keep 4 nines, but that's a constant challenge for us. And really what's next for us is customer first. Everything's about the customer. Really building that bi-directional integration so people are super productive and they can get the event and solve it. Actionable insights is about plugging APM, so we're doing some deep instrumentation in our solutions and we want to bring that richness into the events. Ubiquitous and learns, so what I love about certain tools is they plug in machine learning for you, right? So you don't have to build it. Right there, let them make your engineers better. And we call them 10x engineers. The engineers that you can differentiate the good ones from the great ones are really the ones who can drive the analytics. The ones who can really write that real cool regular expression in Splunk and pull out the real insight. That's really the 10x engineer. So you don't have to have unicorns. Everyone can be a 10x engineer. And the last one is really system and incident response. We want to codify that, pull that into a learning system, and then have that be the knowledge base for us. So that's what we're doing. Happy to chat with you, but please chat with Aaron. We can tell you a little bit more about ING and our architecture and our SRE practice. But I wish you guys well and good luck with your PagerDuty journey.
Those were some great insights. The team from Ladbrokes, Cabcharge and ING are going to be outside having a coffee now because we're going to break for afternoon tea and come back to the room at 3 p.m. to hear more from REA Group, Xero and Bonato.